Well, welcome to the third webinar in our series about moving to Spain. So let me just change things a bit here. So, right, yes. So the pandemic has had many of us in lockdown are unable to travel to Spain to find a new home and to progress your move to Spain. It's still unclear when we'll be able to travel, and obviously there were new announcements today, and so it's unclear what the rules will be. Those who have had both vaccines seem likely to be able to travel, but those who have not may have to pay for and pass the COVID test before coming to Spain. And the quarantine restrictions are another factor. So all of this leads to some uncertainty as to what will happen in terms of being able to move, to come and visit and view this properties over here. But one of the announcements today did seem to indicate a potential exemption for people who are looking to buy property and move. So I'm sure more clarification will come over the next few days. So looking at the people who've registered for the event, it shows that just under half of those registering intend to buy in Spain, and a similar number intend to rent before they buy. And the balance is made up of a relatively small number of people who intend to rent in Spain, and a few that have their own property already. So it's also clear from the registrations that a number of you have not so particularly narrowed down the area that you're planning to live in, as many have listed multiple regions. But whatever I think we will try to give you an idea of what the different regions are today and what would make you choose those particular regions. So when you do finally get to Spain to be able to do your viewings and so on, it's very important that you're able to make the best use of your time in Spain to find the right property, the right location, whether it is or rent or to buy. This session is about helping you to understand what the different regions offer, what's happening in the market currently, and what you can do now to ensure that when you get on the plane, you'll be able to hit the ground running. We're joined by three speakers who operated property finders in Spain: Joanne Alderton, MD of Aldertons, who covered the northern Costa Blanca; Nigel Salmon, MD of Girasol Homes, who covered the southern Costa Blanca, Murcia region, Granada and Mallorca; and Jason Wild, head of Marbella Connection, who covers the Costa del Sol. Now, we recorded a discussion between the four of us a few days ago, and I'll run that in a moment. And they will introduce themselves in that recording. And before we get started, though, just to mention that you can ask your questions. There's a Q&A function on your screens, and if you send those questions, we'll cover those at the end. And anything that we don't cover, we will follow up after the webinar. So I will now just sort of get ready to set up that recording. Second. Right. Okay. So before we get started, perhaps you could tell us a little bit about yourselves, about the area you cover, and perhaps if we start with Joanne, if you could just tell people about yourself.
Certainly can. Hi everyone, my name is Joanne Alderton. I run an agency on the northern Costa Blanca called Aldertons of Spain. We cover the area roughly from Villajoyosa and Benidorm all the way up to Denia, so the Marina Alta and the Marina Baixa areas of the Valencian coast, the Alicante region. Right.
And Nigel, heading south gradually.
Yeah, hi, thanks Nigel. Hi everybody. My name is Nigel Salmon. I run Girasol Homes, which is 14-year-old Spanish and Portuguese property finders. We cover sort of southern Costa Blanca, Murcia, Granada and Huelva on the Portuguese coast. I work with Jason for Costa del Sol, and basically those are the areas we cover.
Okay, and Jason.
Yes, hi, Jason Wild. I run a company that goes under the name of the Marbella Connection, purely because it's the Costa del Sol are the main areas. My experience, having moved here in 2000, ranges from Malaga City itself, where we have various different property developments and resales, right through across then to the other side where you've got various different towns, ranging through Mijas, Marbella, Estepona, and right down towards Sotogrande, almost to the point of arriving at the border of Gibraltar. So it's about 165 kilometre coastline that's covered, and so we're at the southern point of the country.
Okay. Well, the last year has been very difficult with the pandemic, making travel to Spain almost impossible and delaying many people's plans to move to Spain. In this session, we will aim to explain what impact this has had on the market in Spain. And as we approach the time when travelling and moving to Spain becomes more viable, we'll look at what you can do now to ensure that you can hit the ground running when you're finally able to make that trip to find your home in Spain. We'll also give you an idea of the different regions and the attractions of each of those. So, firstly, Jason, what impact have you seen on the property market in Spain from COVID and the travel restrictions? And has it been possible for you to continue to help people to find property in Spain?
Obviously, it's been a difficult time. Tourism and hospitality sectors have been hit. Certainly in the areas that I live in, real estate's been no different. It's been a very difficult 12 months with the restrictions. So, you know, it's the freedom of movement has impacted the amount of viewings we can conduct. And obviously then the amount of offers and therefore sales. So, you know, without people being able to physically see a property, it by nature makes things, has an impact. I mean, there are, myself included, you know, agents have been running around videoing their properties, been trying to conduct virtual tours where possible, but it's never quite the same as, you know, if you know the area, that's all well and good. But yeah, you know, sales have slowed for that reason. It's just, you know, bums on seats and lack of.
Right, and sorry, Joanne, would you like to sort of add anything to that? What's your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, we've noticed obviously a slightly different market being further up the coast. The move to the virtual market has increased, obviously, for obvious reasons, for the lack of freedom of movement. And the virtual market has been buoyant. We're out every day videoing properties, not only for UK customers, but from customers all throughout Europe. And one thing to note at the moment is that the freedom of movement for the UK clientele is very specific. They're not allowed to travel into Spain. However, for the rest of Europe, they are actually allowed to travel into Spain. So that market has still been going around. There's been this oxymoron, really, of information that's been given out by the government in Spain. So they've locked down the borders, but people from Holland can still travel down and come and view houses. So we can't travel. I, for example, can't go over to Mallorca, but somebody from Holland can fly into either of those regions without a problem. So we have had from our European customers viewings still taking place. We've also noticed there's been a return of the Germans in this area as well. They seem to be coming down quite often. And we have had really good interest from people from the cities. There's been a big move from the national market to buy coastal properties or properties with a garden. So that has really worked in our favour. But recently, interestingly, we've just taken part in a huge survey of this region with most agents, people working within the real estate industry. And there has been a huge impact in sales, obviously, but there's still an expected 60% slump in sales over the forthcoming 3 or 4 months if the Spanish government extends the lockdown. So it's, you know, it's difficult times, but it's not impossible times.
Okay, thank you. Nigel, finally, did you have anything to add? What's been your experience of this?
Yeah, much to sort of echo Jason and Joanne's experience to a certain extent. We have sold some properties, especially in this quarter, but they've been sort of at the bottom end of the market for people sort of knowing the sort of developments where these properties are at through video viewings as well.
Yeah.
There are some local clients on the ground as well, but not many. And I think it's been quite confusing for people to understand what the rules are, whether they can travel, whether they can't travel, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, but I think we'll be busy as soon as it unlocks. You know, we'll be rushed off our feet, you know, because every time in 2020 that there was a window of opportunity for people to travel, we certainly saw them traveling and buying. But obviously, as Joanne says, the longer it goes on, obviously the harder it is to sort of get that momentum going again. But no, I'm optimistic, but it's been pretty tricky.
Okay, and so what do you see as the sort of expectations for the Spanish property market in 2021, and what are the main factors that are influencing prices? And I guess the big question is, are there any bargains out there? Nigel, perhaps if you could go first.
Yes, there's always bargains, and obviously there are always going to be people who are desperate to sell. And obviously, if they've been trying to sell for perhaps a year, maybe longer, then obviously their motivation's a bit quicker. There may be some people selling who are maybe UK residents who don't meet the criteria anymore, or maybe living under the radar where they may just have to sell their property. But I think there will be some bargains. I think with the sort of more popular properties, there's a stronger market for those anyway. They're much in demand from sort of continental Europeans. So I don't think that's going to be such an issue, you know, in the future. So hopefully it will continue, you know, with obviously a bit of interruption from you know, from COVID, to be a pretty strong market. We're all hoping that's the case, but obviously time will tell.
Okay, thank you. So Joanne, could you, so what do you think is going to be happening in 2021 usually? So crystal ball question.
Yeah, I think, well, touching on the bargains, yeah, there's always going to be bargains available, but just because we've been in lockdown and COVID's affected the market slightly, I always use, you know, the phrase buyer beware. There are bargains out there, but you have to be super careful because the nuances of the Spanish property law and conveyancing is so vast that sometimes not everything that glitters is gold. So you really do need to be aware of any bargains, no matter what time of year we're in. I expect the increase really to, the interest to increase steadily now over the course of 2021 as various towns, cities relax their freedom of movement throughout Spain. There is more movement taking place. We have noticed an upturn in people who are already over here, so expats that are already living in Spain. There's a movement of property through there. Maybe they've realised that the garden is too big for them because they've been locked down in it for 9 months and they don't want to have to look after their own pool anymore and they're going into townhouses. But there's definitely a movement coming through there as well. Lockdown measures absolutely are going to have an impact on us. And the market is 100% reactive to these lockdown measures. So we just have to ride it and see.
Right, and so Jason, what's your view of the prospects for 2021?
Well, I mean, obviously, it will all depend on when the restrictions lift. I mean, there's certainly opportunities out there, the best of which you may not even necessarily see advertised. You know, these tend to be conversations had between an owner and their agent. Sometimes, you know, owners are more open to offers. Really depends on their situation. There's no doubt there's a pool of property out there that, you know, whereby the owners are more motivated to sell. They feel that the best way to you know, gain attention is going to be price orientated at the moment. So there is that that area. But I mean, the Costa del Sol is predominantly a second home market. So we're not governed by any one particular country in buying here. The Schengen areas, as Joanne's already said, have more accessibility to here and the rest of Spain. So, you know, there's a lot, in most cases, prices haven't been badly impacted to the degree that maybe people may think.
So I guess now going back to the sort of central question is about what in the lockdown in the UK that people are under at the moment. What can they do now to help to get ready to buy their Spain property in Spain and to make sure that when they get over here they hit the ground running? Perhaps Joanne, if you could take that.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I would advise whilst we're in the lockdown period is to not necessarily do your research into the properties that are available, but start building the relationships with the agents that you want to work with. In particular, choose the one from each area that you're interested in and work. An agent's knowledge in the areas you're thinking about is worth its weight in gold. And by building those relationships, every Friday afternoon at 6 o'clock, have a glass of coffee together via Zoom or something, pick each other's brains, find out about each other. And that agent will work the socks off for you then. And at the same time, will then start thinking, because they get to know you a bit more, different areas that you weren't necessarily thinking of in the first place. So yeah, it's always nice to look on the portals and have a look at the houses that are available, etc. But it's more important to invest in the people that are going to be working for you, because they're the ones that are going to really pave the way and make it smooth for you.
Okay, and Jason, what would your advice be on making sure you get ready for?
Well, I mean, typically at the moment, people are looking online. They're searching properties. They're contacting, companies based on the listings they see, and it's a good idea to get an idea on areas, as Joanne says. I mean, that's getting an idea of prices within an area, what you can buy and where, is a good starting point. And the property types that are available in each area, but in my experience, shopping online is a method that going via portals and often isn't that effective. Is the reality. You end up speaking to more and more agents without really narrowing down the options that are suitable to you. I would suggest, people should consider what their motives are for buying. All clients are different and they all require different things for different reasons. Some are wanting a permanent move, some are a holiday home, some want investment, some want rental income. But it is a process, whichever way you go about it. So good planning is key. And I think, finding an agent that has the experience and the knowledge to best guide is a good starting point. And really what Joanne said there is completely right. Is once you've got a rapport with an agent, it really should come down to trying to narrow things down and having almost like an itinerary by the time you arrive.
Okay, thank you. And Nigel, did you have anything to add there in terms of? I think that they're both great points from Jason and Joanne. I mean, we tend to, my colleagues throughout Spain, we try to work with a sort of a top 10, top 20 clients list. So I'd say be one of those people with us, because you're going to get our undivided attention. And obviously, if you're serious about moving, we're serious about you. So it's really important to get organised. There's quite a lot we can do with running around and videoing stuff and all that sort of business too. But until you actually get to the airport and jump on a plane and come and see for yourself, good planning is important. Obviously, there's quite a lot of out-of-date information on the internet as well. Some British buyers will have to do more in terms of the paperwork. So there's certainly worth getting some information together about that. As well. So just be organised, and we're happy to help you. And obviously, if you put your hand up and obviously show us that you're serious, we'll be serious about you.
Okay, thanks. So coming back about virtual property viewings, perhaps Nigel, could you tell us a bit more about how do these work, and how do people make best use of them? Sure.
And again, it's we've only got 24 hours in the day, and obviously we're not going to offer them on all properties, because literally, for anybody with a big area, and Jason and Joanna have a big area, as I do too. But obviously, with the new listings that we're doing, we're trying to do videos on those as well. So any new listing we take on, say for example in Granada, we do videos on absolutely every single property there. with a lot of the new homes developments that we deal with, there are videos available, so we could certainly show videos on those properties. And obviously, if somebody knows the development and they know exactly what they want, then we're very keen to go and do videos on those properties too. So there's quite a bit we can do, but obviously we're trying to sort of focus on the people who really know what they want, and help them. But very happy to do it, and actually it's quite an efficient way of things, happening quite quickly. And I think obviously this is the new normal, even when we get out of the current pandemic, that that's now into what we do on a regular basis.
Assuming it would be possible to travel to Spain in the coming months, what do you recommend that people do to ensure they get the most out of their viewing trip? How long should they expect to take from initial viewing to completing on the sale? And being able to move in. I assume that different things will impact one of the main factors that will affect how long it takes. But if you could give people a flavour, Jason, perhaps you could take that one.
Yeah, I mean that comes down to planning as well. I mean, as I said earlier, if you've got a short list of properties that you've already highlighted because you've got a rapport with the agent, you're working together, you've already highlighted the type of property, the kind of money you've got to invest, and that often then will in turn govern the areas you're focused on. With all that kind of put together, if you've also gone down the route of considering other key fundamentals like the property size and number of bedrooms, proximity to things, whether you're a golfer or you like the beach, sometimes the property layout can come into consideration, the orientation, the outlook. There's a lot of different things that can be factored in before you even arrive, and really, if you've got a client working with you and they've got 3 or 4 must-haves and then things that they certainly don't want, you'd be surprised how much work you can get through before you get here. And then when you are here, you're focused on maybe 7 or 8 properties, having already pre-prepared everything, and then it's really down to, if you've done the homework and you've applied it properly, you'll find that clients will make the decisions themselves. They'll narrow it down to 2 or 3. They might want to go back for a second viewing on a couple, and from that point, you may be putting an offer in somewhere along the line, and that can take 4 or 5 days. It might take 3 days. Other people know the area, they've seen 3 properties, they literally just want to come and see what the accessibility is like, what the outlook is, what view have they got from the main bedroom, how much sunlight is there in the gardens. These are all small details, but at the same time, decisions can be made relatively quickly. And from that point, if a deal is agreed, lawyers are involved. A reservation is then obviously taken on to remove the property from the market. A couple of weeks later, you're probably going to the point of exchange, and completion is sort of typically 4 to 8 weeks. It really depends on the situation with the vendor themselves and also the buyer situation. If the funds are there and they're not in a chain, then obviously these things can happen more timely. And if they do need a bit more time, then lawyers will tend to get together from the vendor and the buyer perspective and draft a suitable time frame to work to. So that's part of the negotiation process in itself. So from start to finish, 4 to 8 weeks. With regards to making a decision, it really depends on how much work you've prepared for before coming, and then 2 to 4 days probably to narrow down the property once you're here.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Joanne, any advice you would give on people to make sure that they get the best out of the viewing trips when they finally get able to do them?
Yeah, I think there's 2 criteria really. Are the viewing trips going to be covering numerous areas, or are they going to cover one area that they've focused on? And the key really is plan, like both Jason and Nigel have said. Using this time now in lockdown to build the relationships up with the specific agents that they want to work with, and in particular choose one from each area if you're looking at numerous areas, or just choose one in the area that you've decided to work on. And by doing that, you're going to save yourself so much time, so much effort and money, because that person will be so knowledgeable about the houses that you're earmarking, etc. They'll be able to say, oh no, that's on the wrong side of a hill. There's no point. If you're only using it for a holiday home in summer, fine. But if you want to live there all year round, it's going to be in the shade in the winter and it's going to be a false economy. So there's lots of information about the areas that your chosen agent will be able to work with you with. I think you should find, when we're talking about timeframes, etc., it really is how long is a piece of string. To give you an example, I have a client that we're just about to close on the purchase now, and we put the offer in on that house 18 months ago. And this is where it brings back to planning and doing the due diligence with regards to types of conveyancing that needs to be done. Is the house on a development? Are there any debts on the development? Is it in the country, etc., etc.? And in this case, the house was completely unregistered, but because it's the perfect house for the client, absolutely bar none, it will be a standout property. It's worth their time and effort to wait until the owners have regularised the entire thing. So go into it with an open mind, and if you've built up that relationship with the right property finder, trust in their decisions for you and trust in their advice, because it'll be worth its weight in gold.
Okay, thanks. Looking forward then, you all operate as property finders, and also in many cases you also act on behalf of sellers. Should people sort of see you in the same way as a estate agent in the UK, or as somewhat different? So, Nigel, perhaps you could just sort of give us a flavour as to how you operate.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Nigel. Yeah, it's totally different. Obviously, in the UK, it's generally a seller's market, and in Spain, because generally you've generally got a lot of opportunities to look at everybody else's stock. It's definitely, you know, it's a buyer's market to a certain extent, because you have to, you know, it's a very collaborative market. It's a bit more like the American market with the multi-listing system too. So it's completely different in some aspects. The one thing you have to do is be organized and effectively choose the right agent to work with. And I think that's been echoed in the previous piece as well. But work with the right agent. It's really, really important. So it is different to the UK insofar as the fact that in the UK, you have to go to lots of different agents to find your property. In Spain, you can go to one to find your property, because we're working with lots of other people, whether they're estate agents or new homes developers, whatever it might be. So I think it's completely different, and people from those markets, but certainly the UK market, need to understand that it's important that you find your agent who will then find your property. So I think it's that way around. So I hope that helps a bit.
Okay, and so by working with one agent, you're saying there isn't a risk of missing out on a property?
There's thousands of properties on the market in Spain. It's completely different to other European markets. Some of those properties in Spain will sell quickly, you know, within a week or two, and some of them will be on the market looking for the right buyer for a long time. They might be at the wrong price level, so you might have discounted it. The marketing, it's completely different. There's different expectations for sellers, so it's sort of, yeah, different. So you need to find the right agent to navigate you through that maze, because it can look like a maze.
Thanks, Nigel. Jason, you know, have you like to talk about how you feel it operates and how it varies in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. I mean, my role really, and these guys would be no different, is to introduce clients to what there is available on the market that best suits their requirement. That is key to our success, and you know, experience in this helps. You know, asking the right questions of the buyer, encouraging them to provide input is paramount. It helps. Any feedback, good or bad, helps us to establish what's going to be the right fit. And once you can establish that, you know, the buyer's requirements early, we're in a better position to advise and where to focus the effort. So really, it's the most effective process. And if you're dealing with one agent and the knowledge is being shared, between you know, from our point of view, it would be about areas and the properties themselves, what can and can't be bought in certain areas, and from the client's point of view, it would be just insight into what it is they're really looking for and what is available in certain areas. Sometimes the budget itself will govern where you look and what type of property you're looking at. So yeah, I mean that's key, because as Nigel's already pointed, is we will then act as the property finder on their behalf and apply our knowledge to getting the right property. And whether, you know, most cases agents don't have you know, I have access to 8,000 properties. I don't have 8,000 properties listed, but by knowing what the client's looking for, we make the appointments on their behalf and go and view those in a collaboration with the agents that have it direct.
Okay, thanks. Joanne, I think, you know, I'm sure you'd echo those comments, but also, you know, moving abroad is a bit different to sort of moving domestically, and there are a lot of other things to do. And I think a lot of people are looking for additional support and services. And perhaps you'd like to tell us a bit about what sort of services you and others offer.
Yeah, I think just touching briefly on what the boys said just back then as well. I think, you know, from my own personal point of view, I don't see myself as an estate agent in the UK, for example, at all. I see myself as a buyer's agent. That's how I bill myself. I am a dedicated property finder. And I think it's important for people to look for property finders or agents that are truly independent. Beware of the franchisees, because they try and lock you into just what their stock is, and you're not getting a true reflection of what's out there on the market. So choose an agent or a property finder that's actually going to work for your benefit, rather than the benefit of the franchisee or the seller. So touching on that point. And then secondly, work with someone. So my agency, for example, we're relocation agency, bureaucracy, administrators, and property finders. And we help in the whole move over to Spain process. So we have in-depth knowledge. I'm currently doing my degree in immigration in Spain. So basically we have the in-depth knowledge of the visa system, of the all the different ways and means to get in, because it has changed massively now for the UK clientele. As of the 1st of January this year, it's actually very, very difficult for clients who want to relocate over here. And I'm dealing with people on a daily basis now that we're having to say, no, unfortunately, the plan that you had to retire over here, you don't have the funds to do so anymore. So the time and the planning needs to go into investing that side of things first as well, before you then start looking at properties, because it can have a huge impact on A, your budget, or B, the actual potential of whether you can move over here. But not everything is impossible. There are always ways and means, but yeah, we need to really look into that to find out the right way for you.
Okay, thanks. So, I mean, looking at the people who've registered, we asked a number of questions to make sure we understand where people are coming from. And one thing that's very clear is that a large number of people have placed that they're considering several different regions, you know, Costa del Sol, Costa Blanca, Southwest, the Murcia region, and so on. And so could you sort of help them to understand the attractions of each area? So if we go through one time and really talk about why do people choose that area? What are the different sort of areas like there? What's the climate like? What's it like out of season? You know, sort of give us an overview and a feel for each of those areas. So perhaps Jason, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, well, Costa del Sol, I mean, it's I mentioned earlier, it's a stretch of about 160 kilometres. We're at the south coast. The main municipalities, they consist of, well, we have cities, we have white wall villages, we've got residential urbanizations. Some of them are very, you know, very Spanish areas and have been maintained that way. But a number of expat communities have also sprung up over time. Malaga city itself is obviously still very Spanish and has all the usual, you know, things you'd associate with the culture. But then you move into Torremolinos and it's like holiday city, and it's everything but, you know. So that's just one example of two places that are very close proximity. Moving from sort of the airport area and going west which is the start of the Costa del Sol. You then come into sort of the Benalmádena and Fuengirola territories. Mijas Costa is another one, with La Cala being a popular place. Then you're into Marbella, Benavís and Estepona, and that then sort of leads into Casares and Manilva, heading right down to San Roque, Sotogrande, which then you're at the other side with the other access to this part of the world with the airport in Gibraltar. So obviously Malaga City is very traditional, as I say. Marbella is the brand in itself. Comes, the property there comes at a premium, considered very high end, the luxury side of things. You've got Nueva Andalucía and Puerto Banús are the main sort of urbanizations that surround that. But Marbella town itself is still traditional. It still maintains its Spanish heritage, and the culture and everything about it. The people that live there is still very Spanish. So within very close proximity, you tend to have the choice of both. One of the most popular white wall villages would be Benavís, which is seen a real boom over the last 10 years. But more recently, Estepona, which is more of a coastal town, had a lot of investment in there. It's got a bus route now directly from Malaga Airport, so the area itself has had a lot of money spent on it in order to be more attractive, I'd say, to the tourist. But also, it's an area where we're seeing more and more people moving to on a permanent basis. So it's featured a lot in a lot of the reality shows, if you like, about Spain. Casares and Manilva are a little bit less known. People are familiar with La Duquesa. They know Sotogrande because they have the two boating marinas, but the villages aren't so well known. But these are all sort of 15-20 minutes from Gibraltar Airport now. And as far as what they're like out of season, well, of course, the towns themselves are more vibrant all year round. They're more highly populated. So, there's local residents that are living there all round, and they aren't reliant on tourists to remain lively or justify having places open typically. So any areas near a town or a village are tend to be the most lively places, and then you've got other areas that are more reliant on holidaymakers, and they become quieter in the lower seasons. So places like Benalmádena, Royal de la Miel, La Cala de Mijas, Marbella, Benavís, and even Estepona. These have probably the least variation throughout the year because they do have a higher density population. And climate, well, unfortunately, these guys will not be able to brag the fact that the majority of our coast is bordering on Northern Africa. So the temperatures here are more moderate throughout the year. The climate here is probably better than anywhere else in Europe, not just Spain. Rain, yes, we do get it. It often falls at night outside of March and April, which is probably the two wettest months. But otherwise, we're sun cream and shorts all the way.
Okay, thanks. So in terms of Costa del Sol, what would you say is the most differentiating thing that draws people to that area rather than choosing to live up and further north?
I think what we've got in abundance. Obviously we've got, as I've touched on earlier, we've got the choice between fluctuating between the Spanish and more of an expat lifestyle. We've got the sandy beaches, which I'm sure these guys are also operating in areas that can offer that. But for me, the infrastructure that we have in place here is something that's certainly appealed. I've lived and spent time in many so-called sort of appealing areas for expats, and for me, Marbella is still right up there with anywhere in Europe. I suppose accessibility is one thing, but I have a family now, and healthcare and education are important. And my kids go to school in a very good area, and I think the healthcare here, from personal experience, is as good, if not better, than the UK. So from that point of view, the infrastructure, certainly if you're looking for a permanent move, has to be an important consideration, and I think, you know, this part of the world is well catered for.
Okay, thanks, Jason. Nigel, perhaps you could give us a flavour for the areas that you cover and explain the different attractions of each.
Well, there's quite a few areas which we do deal with. Southern Costa Blanca, south of Alicante and Murcia have been popular areas for decades, really. More Southern Costa Blanca, which is sort of Alicante's southern region, probably longer than Murcia, which is more up and coming, more than sort of a decade and a half ago. Communication, it's easy to get to, or it used to be until obviously the pandemic. Climate's fantastic, very good winter climate as well. There's a preponderance of golf courses in the area, some great beaches in Costa Blanca and Costa Calida. Generally, the price of property has been reasonably low over the last sort of 10 to 15 years. It's certainly in many cases been an entry level investment into Spain. And I think a lot of people have come here on holiday. You know, mums and dads have brought their kids here. The kids are now buying in this area. There's some affinity to this area in terms of, you know, familiarity, I guess. Other areas we deal with, obviously Granada. That's a completely different area. Where you get in Granada, you've got a sort of a tale of two climates. You do get climate, you know, some seasons as well. And obviously in Huelva, which is on the Portuguese borders, that's been known as sort of the Costa de la Luz, which means the coast of light. And it's very much been sort of called the Spanish Algarve as well, and very reasonably priced too. So I guess our area, there's three different areas too. Southern Costa Blanca and Murcia. It's ease of access and affordability. And obviously the area of Granada is slightly harder to get to. Different types of properties, more country houses, a bit more up and down. And obviously Huelva, so Costa de la Luz on Portuguese borders, again, very affordable, slightly harder to get to. There's no main airport there. Obviously communication and ease of access is good for the first areas I've mentioned. So quite a lot to go around and quite a lot in terms of choice. There's a lot of high density in Costa Blanca South and Murcia. So obviously prices are a bit lower than obviously if you're in a sort of slightly more upmarket area, I guess, you know, with bigger houses and bigger plots, which obviously Costa del Sol and Costa Blanca North, Joanne's area, deal with as well. But plenty of choice for sure.
Okay, thanks, Nigel. And then Joanne, perhaps you could talk about the Costa Blanca North.
Absolutely. I can wax lyrical on this place for a long time, but I shall try and keep it concise. Basically, the Costa Blanca North is deemed as a special area, as an area of a higher quality of properties and size of houses. But it does actually have something to offer everybody. It's an absolute paradise of, in Spanish, mar y montaña, which is mountain and sea. We are surrounded by some beautiful mountain ranges, which I know Jason touched on his amazing hot weather down in the Costa del Sol. But actually, in reality, it's only a couple of degrees difference in the winter or in the summer. But we have, because of the mountain ranges, we have this amazing breeze that comes through, not a wind, a breeze, and it stops that really high humidity that, you know, you get out of the shower and you're sweating immediately. You don't get that here, so it's a really pleasant climate. And we're actually on the Mediterranean coast, and the basin that's right in front of our area is about 4 degrees higher than the Atlantic, so we do have a couple of bells and whistles that we can pull out in this area. The area here, it's lush, it's green, it's mountainous, but it does have the flat valleys. We've got spectacular coastline, quite Jurassic, with some hidden pirates coves and some beautiful golden sandy beaches. It's famous, this area, for its wine producing region, the Halon Valley, which is about 7-minute drive from where I'm sat right at this moment. So, you know, absolutely, gastronomy in this area is just second to none. You know, from where I'm sat right now on the Benissa coast, I've got 8 Michelin-starred restaurants that I can drive to within 20 minutes. So, you know, it's spectacular. Every single town on this coastline has its own marina. So the lifestyle out on the sea is beautiful. And the top part of our area, Marina Alta, is Denia. That's 100 kilometres as the crow flies from Ibiza. So we have daily ferries that go over to the islands as well. So it's really well connected. The 2 airports that service this area are Valencia and Alicante, and we're never more than an hour and 10 minutes away from each. Roughly, your average time from an airport to your holiday home or to your home would be around 45 to 50 minutes. So really, really well located as well. And that's just the AP7, one motorway that goes between the 2. So you can't get lost either. The thing that you'll find about this area, it's so diverse. As I said earlier, you've got Denia, which is, you know, 2,000 years worth of history, cobbled streets, beautiful cafe lifestyle, amazing port, gorgeous castle, loads of bustling shops and bars and terraces. And then you come 10 minutes down the road and you're in Javier. And Javier is a fantastically popular high-end resort, really, an area to move to, really popular with Brits. And, you know, if you've not heard of Javier, you need to go online and Google it, because it's an amazing place. We've also got Marbella, which is known as the jewel of the northern Costa Blanca. It's a beautiful town. And then moving further down the coast, we come to Calpe, we come to Altea with its whitewashed buildings and beautiful church on the hill. It's a really emblematic picture of this area. And then we come down to the more, I call them suburb areas like La Nucia and Albert. They sort of feed in towards the bigger beast that is Benidorm, which everybody's heard from. And Benidorm, you know, gets scoffed at quite a lot by quite a few people. But Benidorm is diverse. Benidorm is huge and has one area that's, as you've probably all seen the TV programs and stuff, but then it's a very busy working town as well, with some amazing beaches, and really has been a wonderful place to nip down to throughout our lockdown here, because it's only half an hour down the road from me, and there's always life. It's loads of stuff going on there all the time. It's really nice. So we've got something for everybody in this region, from old Jurassic towns and villages to medieval towns and villages to nightlife and wonderful holiday regions. We've got theme parks, we've got water parks, we've got whatever you want. It's all within about half an hour drive. The other thing, obviously I moved over here, well, not obviously to you guys, but I moved over here to this region about 7 years ago, and I have brought my 2 children up here. They were 1 and 2 when I brought them to here. So they're in the school system here, which is full of the public schools. They speak Valenciano and Castellano. So not only are they learning those 2 languages, but the Valenciano is very heavily French based, so they can actually understand French as well now. And then the healthcare in this area is second to none as well. It's a really good infrastructure. So people shouldn't, if they ever thinking Costa Blanca North or Benidorm, don't ever dismiss it just like that, because it's an absolutely beautiful place to come and visit.
Okay, thanks, Joanne.
Mm-hmm.
So just as a sort of final question here, people are there stuck in England the winter after this terrible period with the COVID. Give me a one-liner. Why should they move to Spain? Joanne first.
One-liner. You've made that difficult. Because it's absolutely fantastic. There's nothing to lose. It's just amazing.
Okay, thank you. Nigel, what would you say?
Life's too short not to, I guess.
Okay, and finally, Jason.
For me, it was a lifestyle decision. I came here in 2000, and it's never disappointed me. As I said earlier, I've been to many different places in different parts of the world, and I always gravitate to Marbella. It's what I class as home. So I think many that have been here would feel the same way. Okay,
thank you all. Well, now we'll move on to any questions that we've got. So I'll go through the questions that have been sent during the course of that recording. Okay, thank you. Right. That was the recording. Now let me sort of just pick up on the questions right here. Now the first one, yes, it's a question of contacting Joanne, and I'll make contact with you afterwards to put you in touch, which I'm always happy to do. And perhaps just make the point that if you want to talk to any of the panelists we have today, then you can go to their websites or just drop us a line at expats@expatnetwork.com, and we'll pass you on and refer you on. A question here, I'm looking at the city of Malaga, and not a tourist resort such as Benalmádena or Torremolinos. I've been looking at sites such as Idealista and Habitacia. Are any of the agents active in the big cities via these websites? I'm not particularly interested in an expat community. So what sort of areas would you recommend there, Jason?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the areas that we cover. Actually, we've got, for international buyers, we've got some exclusive deals on some of the refurb projects that are available there. So it might be well worth them considering getting in contact with us. As we've just been talking about, you know, you're unlikely to find a website with absolutely everything available. Things change all the time. But needless to say, my company has access to the new developments, any resales, and these refurb projects, which tend to be protected in the historic part of the old town. So if you want that particular area, you need to be probably speaking to somebody that's proactive there, and we're certainly one of those companies.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. So this one, I think, perhaps get input from each of you in turn. Bob asks, would you consider this as a good time to invest in property in Spain? So we'll start with Nigel on that one.
Yeah, hi Bob. Yeah, I think so. I think the thing is, the UK market hasn't really been as influential over the last 4 or 5 years as it used to be. There's a lot of European people buying at the moment, and that sort of has insulated the market against sort of possibly Brexit. So absolutely, but you've got to make sure you're buying in the right areas. It shouldn't just be price driven. It should be looked at for the useful things like, you know, where is it located? Is it near facilities? How easy to get to? All of those things need to be calculated into what you're looking to do. But yes, I would think it's a very good time to be looking at property in Spain. Although obviously at the moment it's slightly different in terms of the fact that obviously it's quite hard to get there.
Okay. Joanne, perhaps you would like to go ahead?
Yeah, exactly what Nigel said. Any time is a good time to invest in property, assuming that you've done the homework and you've investigated the area. So, like Nigel also touched on, there's certain areas here throughout Spain that there's mass development going on and supply is surplus to demand. Whereas there's other areas where there are very strict controls on building regs, etc. So the supply is always good. And where there's a good input of our European neighbours coming into the area, that holds its ground within the property market over here. So they're really good areas to be invested in because the prices are just keeping on rising.
Okay, thanks. And Jason, what would your comments be?
Well, if it's a lifestyle decision, then the answer to that is obviously yes. You know, the lifestyle here is far more easier to live with, I think, than being in the UK, but obviously being here 20 years is probably a bit biased. But if it's an investment decision, then I would say yes as well, because I think once we see the freedom of movement lift for Spain generally, I mean, the interest hasn't waned in my experience for the area. The sales have only been affected because of the amount of people actually being able to get here to buy. So the longer you leave it, and if you are thinking sort of, you know, to wait till the restrictions have lifted or beyond that, then I think you'll see that prices will, the deals will be harder to come by. There are certain people at the moment that need to sell and are using the price to, you know, attract attention. But I think those kind of opportunities may well disappear once the freedom of movement lifts. And in fact, I've had clients say to me recently that if they haven't sold their property by a certain time, that they're going to put the price up, which, you know, is a bit daft sometimes. But they're of the thinking that, you know, there'll be more people here, so it'll be easy to sell. not necessarily the case, but that's the thinking.
Okay, thanks, Jason. The next question from Maria is it only Spanish agencies that expect the buyer to pay the agency fees instead of the seller, or does it vary by location? Nigel, perhaps you could.
It does vary from location to location. Up in Valencia, you would be expected to pay a fee to the agent as a buyer, but generally around the areas that we deal with, the people on this this panel, generally you don't have to pay a purchase premium, so that's all usually included. Now, unless we specifically say that we're going to charge you a fee, it may be from a bank property or something like that, to an administration fee. That can happen, but generally in the areas we cover, there's no buyer fee.
Actually, Joanne, perhaps I could ask you to cover that one. I think the way that you operate may be different.
Yeah. My agency, we operate as independent property finders as opposed to listing properties and selling them on behalf of the owners. So we actually do charge a fee. Our fee is based on the percentage of the property that you're going for, and yeah, it's property finder's fee. Basically, it's a very common thing in this area. If you're taking on a buyer's agent, then you're securing their services. I would say 9 times or 9.5 times out of 10, that fee is easily deductible from the negotiations that we do on the actual property at the end. So you're getting services practically for free in the end. But yeah, it's more like a contract that you enter into to ensure that you have our undivided attention, but at the same time, you are also, excuse me.
Sorry, I think we may have lost Joanne there. So let's move on to the next question. One of the most frustrating aspects of looking for property is that often the listings don't give details about the annual service charges and property taxes. What's the best way to overcome this? Nigel, could you take that?
Well, basically ask. Generally, they're not tend to be listed on a lot of the portals that you see. And if you're looking at properties on some of the major portals like Idealista and Kiera and ThinkSpain, there's no facility for that information to be put on there. So unfortunately, it's going to be one of those frustrations. Generally, and again, probably Jason will back me up on this, the more facilities you have on a site, the more expensive it will be. We'll generally have a rule of thumb, and obviously it's a standard question we get asked quite a lot, but it does vary tremendously. So obviously you need to find out what those are. They tend to be in resorts where there's a golf course, there's 24/7 security, there's quite a lot of communal gardens which you're expected to contribute towards. So generally that's where the fees can be quite high, but obviously it does vary quite a lot depending on the area and obviously what you're getting given.
Right. Next one from Ken. What are the hidden costs to buying? For example, if one has 100,000 to spend, what's the maximum house one could look for? So I think we're just looking at those costs. I don't think they are necessarily hidden. It's just that people may be less familiar with them. Jason, perhaps you could take that one.
Yeah, I mean, there's three main costs to buying. In our region, the agent fee is included in any negotiations of price, so that isn't one of them. But you do have a property transfer tax that will be geared based on the property price. Up to 400,000, it's set at 8%. Between 4 and 7, it's set at 9%, and above 7, it's 10%. Other than that, you've then got notary and property registration fees, which are payable at notary on day of completion, and you'll have your legal fees, which will also be subject to payment probably at the same time. They can equate to, I would think, something around 2.5% ordinarily. But if you're buying at 100,000, some of these notary fees are fixed prices. So whether you're spending €1 million or 100,000, they might come in at €1,500. So the percentage against 100,000 is actually higher. So at that level, you're looking about 12%, but there are also comes down to whether you're buying using bank finance. If it's a Spanish bank, there are additional costs to that as well, because there are double notary fees for the title deed for the property and the mortgage, and there are obviously set up fees for that. So in that instance, you're looking at probably near 14 or 15% overall of something around 100,000. So if the gentleman's a cash buyer and he's got 100,000 sterling, then I guess about £88,000 will be the property price he needs to be looking at.
Okay, thank you. So the last question is here about the taxes related to owning a property in Spain. Who'd like to take that one? Joanne, haven't got back to us?
I'm back. Hello. Sorry about that.
Can you cover that one? What are the taxes related to owning a property in Spain?
Pretty similar to the UK. So you do have the equivalent of council tax, which is IBI, which you'll see on lots of documentation, IBI. All the taxes are much lower than what you would be used to paying in the UK. So you have IBI, then you have Basura, which is your rubbish collection tax. And then you will have, sorry, my mind's just gone blank a second. Yeah, IBI and Basura, and then your annual taxes that you will need to pay are things like non-resident tax or resident tax, dependent on your residential status in Spain. Yeah, so all taxes are individual, 100%, apart from the state taxes or the town hall taxes, which is your IBI and your Basura.
Okay, thank you. I think that's covered most of the questions, and if I've missed any, I will cover them after the event. And as I say, if you want to get in touch with any of our panelists here, then do let me know, and we can pass that on. So thank you, everybody, and good luck in finding your home and moving to Spain. Cheers.
Thank you.